So what are we talking about today?
Well, something that I have been thinking about a fair bit, maybe because I've been working with it a good bit for the past couple of years and then also just the past couple of months, is high res.
hmm
So, yeah, I mean, I'm curious, how much high res have you worked with?
Very little, if not none, uh, unless we count base maps. Uh, there was that one SimCLR experiment that we did on the Mapbox base map just to see what would come out,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
somewhat unsurprisingly, uh, the model really honed in on just like the different acquisitions and the way they were stitched together, which seemed
Hmm.
so obvious in hindsight. But yeah, so that's pretty much the extent of my experience with high res, I would say.
But you've never worked with like anything close to a time series of high res, is that true?
No, yeah, never had the fortune or misfortune
Yeah.
of doing that.
And I think that's what I want to talk about. So I think almost, and this is a good question for our audience or whoever. Um,
Our 12 listeners.
yeah. Like, are you working mostly with medium res Landsat
hmm
Sentinel, or are you actually doing a lot of high res? I've actually
hmm
found the worlds to be pretty disjoint, and I always wondered why. Like, I always wondered, like, until I was in this job, I really didn't have, just like you, I'd looked at base maps,
hmm
tried a few spatial things on some high res base map type stuff, which I think is intuitive, because you can resolve more things spatially. So it's like find things in space
Yeah,
from this static point in time or from this mosaic.
yeah.
Um, yeah, until this job, I never worked with time series or time stacks of high res. And I realized why the worlds are so apart and
hmm
why they're actually kind of like almost different problems. So, one thing I didn't realize, or I just had never looked into enough. So, I feel like most people who worked with Landsat or Sentinel or
hmm
MODIS, you're kind of familiar with like sun synchronous orbits.
hmm
You expect the data to be imaged all the time.
hmm
You, it's like every 5 days you're gonna get a Sentinel-2 scene. Every day you're gonna get
hmm
a MODIS scene. That's what you get. You don't task
hmm
it; it just collects at the same time.
Right.
That's just not how high res works. Um, and I always wondered why that was the case. Like in the
hmm
beginning, I think very naively, I wondered, is it just because, we don't have access to all the data and all this massive amount of
hmm
daily high res globally exists and we're not looking at it? But when I kind of looked into it, I realized that's actually not the case. Like, and again, I think I learned this way too late and I think is obvious, but if you want to resolve at a higher resolution, you need a bigger telescope.
Right.
And so it's just basically based on physics, like
Yeah.
how wide of a swath you can image
Yeah.
is basically totally dependent on the size of this telescope, and that is what's governing your spatial resolution. Forgetting multispectral for a second, just thinking about like optical
Yeah.
type of imaging, and so they just are the swaths that they're imaging are tiny,
hmm
and then the other thing is that also I didn't realize is if they, let's say they were imaging this small swath, but then they were kind of imaging this entire strip, like imagine this strip as they're orbiting. They don't
hmm
even do that. And the reason they don't do that is because the amount of data that they're collecting
Mm.
is insane, like the
Right.
volume of the data, right? And so you
Yep.
have to downlink all the data, or maybe you have to store
Yep.
some of that data on board, and it's like that becomes this huge like you're
Yep.
overwhelming all these systems that are built to beam this data down. And so that's
Yep.
another
Yeah.
thing that
Yeah. Yeah.
totally went over my head. It's like, oh, they're actually just
Interesting.
not even imaging all the time.
So, could you? So, what do you think of as high res? Like, is 5 meter high res? Is three
No,
meter high?
sub 1 meter.
Sub meter.
Sub
Okay.
meter is what I consider to be useful high res. Um,
Okay.
because when you start looking at these, like, 2.5 meter,
hmm
5 meter products, I feel like effectively they never end up being that much more useful than the Sentinel-2 10-meter. There's cases where that is not the case, but for the most part, I feel like, sub-meter is where you really start actually spatially resolving, fine building structure or planes and runways. That's the classic example.
Yeah.
You actually start really seeing those things in a way that you just don't see at 5-meter.
Gotcha. And so from a data volume perspective, like, okay, so it's scaling quadratically with
Sure, yeah.
because right, as the pixels are square, but it's also imaging a smaller swath, and so it's still an issue despite that.
It's still an
Like,
issue despite that. Yeah. At
okay.
least from what I understand.
And so is this what the whole thing about like edge compute, like, oh, run the model on the satellite, is this
I
what
think that's
because
part of the motivation. I think part of and I don't know enough about this to know whether, A, if this works at all, or B, if this is being done by anybody in a really useful capacity. But I do think that's the idea, is you beam down the analytics, or you beam down the like importance. Like if it's not an important image, you don't send it down or something like that. Maybe that's one use case. And the other use case is you actually run some, I don't know, I guess like if we just take NDVI for an example, do you just beam the NDVI down? I have no idea.
Yeah, I think maybe it's sort of like you're running some sort of object detection thing and you just beam down the detections.
Sure. Maybe it's like building type detection for infrastructure monitoring or something.
So, can you give us an idea of like this? So we're talking like hundreds of, like, what size are these images for like a swath, or just approximately?
That's a good question for a swath. I don't know if I have that off the top of my head, but I think one concrete, like I've looked at a lot of Gaza in the Middle East, and so let's say we're looking at a Sentinel-2. Like Sentinel-2 will image, I think in one Sentinel-2 footprint, you image like all of Gaza plus some, in that strip. And so if you just clipped it to Gaza and you just took the RGB bands and you convert it to byte, I wish I knew the number off the top of my head, but I want to say that's like less than 100 megabytes.
Okay, for Sentinel-2.
Less than 100 megabytes for Sentinel-2. And it's possible I'm off a little bit, but I don't think I'm off by that much. And it's possible we were less than 50 megabytes. We're talking byte scale, 10 meter pixels. SkySat, which is the high res, this is 50 centimeter nominally. I think true ground sample distance sometimes can be like 78 centimeter or something, depending.
Okay.
The swath is not the width at which they can image and the way the overpasses work. And there's one last aspect that I haven't talked about with high res, which is this like this agile pointing thing. So what they do is these satellites are designed because of these data volume issues, because of the field of view issues. They do agile pointing, so they tilt and rotate based on what they're tasked to image. And so there's multiple reasons to do this. One, so you're imaging the places that your customers care about, and by doing that, you're just, it's more efficient from a data volume standpoint. And so these satellites can like quickly slew in space to basically image multiple targets within their tasking area based on where they are in orbit. And so the thing that happens as a result of that is you get all this off-nadir imaging. But what you do get is a lot of revisit. But anyways, back to the original question. They, even with this agile pointing and the number of satellites they have in orbit, you almost always never get a full coverage over Gaza for a single day in the day that it was imaged.
Wow.
Like often you might have to mosaic to a week or even longer. Again, this is sometimes you do almost get a full, and it just kind of depends on where these satellites are in orbit and stuff. But in terms of data volume, if you did a mosaic a byte scaled RGB mosaic at 50 centimeter from SkySat, let's say that's what you did over Gaza, you're talking about 4 gigabytes nominally.
Gotcha. I had no idea about this agile pointing thing. Do imagery providers provide tools to help you like co-register? I mean, that just seems like it would be a bit of a nightmare to like create a time series, like a good stack, basically.
Exactly. So I think this is the thing that also, I mean, these are all the things I feel like I've only realized over the past couple of years, which is, you know, so this whole process of orthorectification, which is like take the position of the satellite in space, which has error associated with it, right? Because it's based on GPS and this and that. Take your digital elevation model, take the model that you have about your sensor, and then do all this processing to basically align all the pixels, right, for the things that are imaged. Like there's way more positional error for the satellite in space than you might expect. Then you might it's not perfect. The ephemeris of the satellite is not perfect at all. So even just taking that without considering all the other things, it's like you might get a meter or two of pixel misalignment just all the time. And with 10 meter pixels, it sucks, but it's kind of fine. And with 50 centimeter pixels, that means like if you have 5 meter positioning error and you have 50 centimeter pixels, you have 10 pixels of misalignment.
Yeah. And when you say misalignment, you mean relative to the ground?
Yes, relative to the ground. Or even if you forgot the ground for a second and you just, and we're going to this time series, if we're kind of building this time series example, right? Trying to do time series analysis from 5 SkySat acquisitions. And I'm picking on SkySat because I've used it the most, but I actually think this is the case with almost every high-res image provider, which is they do some level of orthorectification and co-registration, but they're optimizing kind of for the global. They're not optimizing for your local area where you have a ground reference points and you do all this other stuff to make it better. Like they don't do that for you. And so the data that you end up getting, let's say you have these 5 images, it's like you have pixel shifts kind of, 5-10 pixel shifts per time step easily. And so basically it's almost like all the time series stuff you thought you could do with Sentinel-2 that you do very easily, these NDVI time series or whatever, all of that kind of doesn't work because of all of these imaging issues that you get. So it's kind of a huge problem.
Yeah, and it's not solved. Like, I guess the providers aren't doing it, so that it's not solved.
I don't think at least from what I understand, the providers are not, and the data that I have gotten to date, the providers are not locally optimizing for your particular area because, again, you're almost always solving a local problem with high res because of of these imaging constraints. So, they're not doing the we picked 4 ground control points over Gaza, and then after doing our original orthorectification process, we did a another correction based off this, and then we use this local digital elevation model here, which is better than SRTM. SRTM is what, 30 meter?
That's what I was going to ask. Is if your DEM is 30 meters, but your pixels are 50 centimeters.
Yeah, exactly.
That's also an issue.
And combine that with the final thing, which is kind of the nail in the coffin, which is these because of this agile pointing, you're not imaging at the same time every single day. And depending on where your satellite is at one point or another point, you're almost always imaging, you might be imaging off-nadir. And so between acquisitions, you have, 30 degrees off-nadir to the north or, to this direction. And then the next time you have it 25 degrees, but the shadows are in a totally different direction.
Yeah. And did you task? Did you run the tasking yourself, or was this kind of already in the archive? Okay. So I was just wondering if there's an option to choose like I want this from this angle. Like I don't want an acquisition that's off nadir
I
basically.
think that must be possible.
It must be,
It
right?
must
Like
be possible.
yeah.
Yeah, I have never been in a position where I have been able to task an image myself directly. I've asked other people to task stuff for me, and they have done it, but I haven't ever made those types of requests. I have looked. There was one story I worked on where I did look at these two SkySat collections that were imaged at almost the exact same angle at almost the exact same local time, and actually those doing a analysis between those two images was really cool because things were way more lined up than they had ever been.
Interesting. So, given all these issues, do you think I'm just wondering why this is unsolved? Is it just that people don't really use high res the same way they use Sentinel and Landsat, which is like, let's do the time series, but more like, here's a small patch and I know where everything is already. I just want to be able to interpret it myself as opposed to like co-register and overlay.
I think it's a good question. As opposed to why it's not solved, I think the reason it's not, all the tools are there to solve it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of solving it at scale globally, I think that's almost like, it's almost kind of an impossible problem to bite off in a way because of how
Right.
locally specific you would need to get everywhere to do it. And maybe
Gotcha.
maybe people are doing research into that. But it's kind of this crazy local geometry problem that you'd have to solve locally everywhere, as opposed to like the global problem that they're solving imperfectly.
Gotcha.
So I think there's that. I don't know enough about whether it's really being solved, and I actually don't think people are really doing time series analysis with high res.
Yeah.
I think what people are mostly doing is sort of image interpretation or visual inspection. Like, imagine you're a person who's looking at port activity. I feel like this is a common high res use case, port activity for ships or, parking lots, stuff like this. It's like the co-registration doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
right?
just
It's
count
like,
the ships.
if the like whole position of everything shifts a little bit, it's like, whatever. I'm just looking for the things I'm looking for.
No, I mean it's interesting because I guess it's hard for me to really think other than like it's hard for me to really think of an application where you would want the high-res time series other than some change detection that you would want to be like highly localized where counting the number of changes isn't enough, or like doing it on an object basis isn't enough. You kind of want to map the changes and exactly where they are.
So I don't know if the reason, I mean, I can think of some kind of object detection style problems where I feel like you would want a time series would be nice, but but so there's all this geometry stuff, but let's pretend you've solved all of that. I think the other issue is then sort of like the revisit. And like, if you go look in the SkySat archive and stuff, there are places that are imaged almost every day. Like, again, these ports and some of these other sort of things where you can imagine there's high-paying customers who are submitting tasks such that that place is imaged all the time. But generally, it's like you're just not getting that kind of refresh. And so I think time series becomes hard when you have like inconsistent spacing and just inconsistent observations.
Right.
So, and imagine trying to do like NDVI time series where it's like, I don't know, you're doing the measurement and it's not at the same like solar time,
Yep.
And like the atmospherics that are going to change, and you start getting into and again, it's like, how do you do atmospheric correction generally at any time of day?
Right.
That's not easy.
Yep.
So I feel like it's kind of cool because it reveals all these things that I feel like nobody cares about when you're working with level 2 Landsat. It's like everything's done, it's just ready to go. With high res, I feel like kind of nothing's done, and you have to think about everything from the ground up.
Yeah, on the atmospheric correction, I remember when Wyvern released some of the data, I was trying to look at it, And then I just went down a little sort of atmospheric correction rabbit hole, and it just felt like, even for non-high res data, I mean, I guess it's hyperspectral, but the error bars, like the number of assumptions we make when we're doing the corrections is mind-boggling. Like it's kind of like, you know, like the sausage theory, right? Like if you enjoy something, don't go and look at how it's made. Yeah. So going back to all of this, like these geometry issues, and I guess the problem you just mentioned now is more like one of illumination, like at different points of the day. So how did you go about, like, what tools did you use to solve these problems?
I think it's a little embarrassing. But yeah, sure, I can talk about it. So I think first of all, I think it's important to say that because of these issues, I really haven't done a true time series analysis with these stacks of imagery that I've had. What I have done is a lot of pairwise analysis.
Yep.
So imagine stacking multiple pairs of things, and doing like basically kind of this single point change detection. And so I think that does the follow it, like it basically, and I cherry pick. And so I cherry pick collections where the shadow offsets is like not that bad, and the imaging geometry is close-ish.
Yep. So this is all visual and manual.
It's all visual and it's all manual. Like literally, I have gone into the geo transformation metadata in the geotiff and like shifted everything by a couple meters.
Right. And then looked at it again.
And been like, oh, this looks right. Because I basically picked my own ground control points.
Yeah.
And was like, oh, this is just like in this area that I care about, everything is kind of off by this much. And so the other thing too is because of the imaging geometries, it's like this, the co-registration error is nonlinear. So it's not just a fixed offset. It can be if you're working in a small enough area, which for the most part, I would say it kind of was, but but basically it's the most manual shit you could imagine. Like truly terrible.
I mean, I think that makes sense. I mean, when you were just describing the complexity of it, and it seems like, this is unsolvable in the global case, but maybe someone could make a tool to make this a little faster or easier to like, I don't know. You could look at like 6 different shifts and transformations and pick the best one. Or
for sure.
that.
And the QGIS like georeferencer, is pretty good at stuff like this. Like, you can basically take a base map, you can take your TIFF, you can draw ground control points, you can, choose between a few models of how you want to basically do the co-registration fixing to those ground control points, and then it'll kind of do it for you. And so I've used that a bunch, but sometimes like I just kind of cheat when I'm got 2 pairs. It's like I actually don't even care about the alignment to the base map.
Right.
Just care about the relative alignment. And so I just do that.
Do we trust the base map in that case, given that it's high res as well?
I think the base maps are, at least what I found is the base maps seem to better align with all the other like vector data that you might, like if you pulled like global administrative boundaries or you pulled road boundaries or building footprints, typically the base maps tend to align with that pretty well. So I think it would be cool to like learn more about how base maps are made. But I think they do a lot of this work in the base map processing to really kind of like, for this mosaic that we're doing, we really want it to line up.
Yeah. Unless the vector datasets are made from the base maps.
And then sometimes they are. Sometimes they are. So you get this like, I mean, I've actually been in this situation where it's like, I didn't know what to fix, these vectors or the raster.
Yeah.
And so it's like, at some point, it's like, you just got to make the map, and you fix one of them and you call it.
So you're shifting it around, you're looking at it, and you're doing this for each pair that you want to look at. And So when you mentioned the transform, you're talking about a shift, but like you said, it's non-linear. Are you just picking like the best single transform, or are you splitting it up into smaller tiles so you can choose different parameters?
I'm not doing that level of correction.
Hmm.
Like I would say that kind of like I'm doing like kind of regional corrections for
Gotcha.
this kind of stuff, like Rafah or Gaza City. And so
Yeah.
it's it's a large area, but
Hmm.
from a Sentinel-2 standpoint, it's like a speck. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
I think these like transform shifts that I'm doing, I mean, I am doing linear shifts.
Hmm.
I'm just approximating it and saying like I don't care about all the other places.
Yeah. And do you ever, is this like a solo job, or are you ever like sending it to people and asking like, hey, how does this look? Does this look good? What do you think?
I'm just doing it solo. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Sounds like a lot of work.
it's a lot of, I mean, that's the thing is I think I used to be, I mean, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I feel like I used to be in this mindset of like, oh yeah, you just plug in the high res and you're done.
Right.
It's like you
Right.
just plug it in. Like, what's the big deal? Why isn't everybody just, why
Uh-huh.
aren't we just doing everything with high res? It's like we have all this because it's fucking hard as hell.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it makes me wonder about all of these products that are based off of high res, like Overture maps, buildings datasets, and things like that. I'm pretty sure they're based off of high res.
I think high res is one component of those, but it's OSM and it's Microsoft building footprints and it's a lot of other things. I mean, Overture is
Yeah.
pretty good from what I've seen.
But I mean, like the actual building footprints models. I
Hmm.
thought that it might be high res. I know Google's might not be,
Hmm.
but it just seems like doing this globally would be an absolute nightmare. I guess if
It's
you're not
hard.
doing a time stack, but
Yeah,
even
I
if you're
think if you're doing a
mosaicing,
mosaic, yeah,
if the two pieces of your mosaic are like at totally different angles.
totally. But I think so. I think one thing we didn't talk about is that there is a true difference in some of these high res missions and
Hmm.
their corresponding spatial accuracy.
Hmm.
So I think I don't mean to knock on Planet at all. It's the data I use the most,
Hmm.
but I think SkySat stuff is generally imaged further off nadir,
Hmm.
and so it's harder to co-register. It's harder to do time series with, and stuff like
Gotcha.
Maxar is just they're imaging because of their particular satellites where they are in orbit. I think they're flying a little bit higher. They're typically not imaging as much off nadir from the stuff that I've seen, and so the
I see.
co-registration tends to be better. Same with like Airbus,
Yeah.
and so yeah,
What about high res SAR?
high res SAR. I just worked with Umbra data for the first time for a
Uh-huh.
story like maybe a month ago, and
Yeah.
um and it was really fascinating to look at. High res SAR is like mind blowing in terms of the
What
space.
resolution is Umbra data?
I think it's like 30, 50. It depends on the imaging mode. 30
Okay.
centimeter, 50 centimeter, super high res.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was looking at it over Jamaica to try to do like building damage
Hmm.
estimation, and they had all these footprints over these towns across Jamaica. There are like maybe 9 or 10 different areas that they imaged across the island,
Hmm.
and and I was trying to do something fast. So as a first pass, what I did was I wanted to, you can see building damage. The building damage is so obvious that you can even visually make it out in SAR imagery, even though it's harder to interpret, like these
Hmm.
collapsed roofs. But what I would do was I would basically just pull the Overture maps vectors over these
Hmm.
areas and see how misaligned it was.
Hmm.
And there was only 1 or 2 places that out of the 10 or so places that were imaged where the footprint alignment to the imagery was like you could use it right off the bat. Almost in every other situation,
Whoa.
you would have had to do fairly serious co-registration fixing to make it, to be able to like use a vector data set on top of it and be like, these pixels
Whoa.
within this footprint correspond to the building.
And is that because of the imaging angle?
It's a good question. In the Umbra case, I don't know the specifics. But maybe it's, even if it wasn't the imaging angle, I mean, there's the DEM, there's I don't know, there's all these other things that come up.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, positional error of the satellite. Yeah, I should look at the metadata to figure out what the imaging angle was. But I ended up using it only over this one area, and part of my decision was because it felt usable with the building footprints.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because there's a speed component to doing
and
all
I've looked
this.
at ISI data in the past, and I've seen similar co-registration things. Like, I think this is just it's actually something I want to learn more about how to do more properly myself, which is, how do you, once you get this orthorectified product, how do you then make it hyper accurate to your particular area of interest? Like, I think, I don't know if you've used Snap from ESA. I think there's tools in Snap to be able to like do this. Like, people do this. It's just not something I know as much about.
Yeah. Actually, it does seem like in your line of work, it would be highly desirable to be able to do this quickly, right? Like, try and align some high-res SAR product with building footprints or like a vector data set.
Yeah.
Because once you know where the things are, you're just looking for a very specific signal over those things. Yeah.
And often the signal is so obvious that it's like, once you kind of solve the data processing issues, the like modeling bit is not complicated at all, because all the information's already there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like putting the information in the right spot.
Yes.
Yeah. And so in the Umbra data, it was pretty obvious where building damage had occurred.
It was. And I had read a paper that had some really clear visual examples of like, what does, and I think the paper used Capella data. But the paper had really good examples of like, this is what collapsed roofs look like. It's very decorrelated. And a lot of this high-res SAR is like single band amplitude, like HH.
Okay.
And so that's all you have. And so so it's just, it's like very obvious from a texture amplitude standpoint what damage looks like. But it can get complicated too. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so going back to the Gaza example after our little SAR detour. So you're doing all of this. You're doing all of this visually for every single pair, and are you mosaicing them, or so you're doing this using GDAL and then looking at it in QGIS to align them. And then once you're done and you've got your aligned stack, then what do you do with it?
Well, I've just got pairs. Pairs of aligned things.
Pairs.
So what I've done is I've run models, like pixel-wise models on the aligned pairs.
Okay.
And so imagine RGB vector. If we're thinking pixel-wise, like imagine an RGB vector from the time point A, RGB vector from time point B at a, hopefully co-registered pixel. And then, you can calculate textural stuff on top of that and shove that in your concatenated thing. But then you can just run models on those, on those stacked vectors. You can even call them embeddings if you want.
You just never miss an opportunity to get an embeddings jab in. I guess you could.
But that was it. Like, I mean, it's, again, I think it's like blindingly simple once you've done all of it. It's just like, unravel the whole thing. Let's say you had
the onion.
I did say that. Yeah. English is my first language. There's my defense. It's so you get when you get two immigrants, talking about this stuff. But yeah, just like, let's say you had pixel-wise labels for your thing you want to find and the thing you don't want to find. You just sample those places. You grab those vectors, shove it into a model,
You doing this
train.
locally?
Yeah. And then,
So,
or you can do it in Earth Engine. I've done it in Earth Engine too. Same thing. But yeah, you sample, you train, and then when you deploy, you unravel all your pixels over your area of interest. So you have this 1 by massive number of pixels. You know, something like an XGBoost is just going to fire through that really fast locally. And then you're done.
Yeah.
And then you stitch it back together. You just ravel it back into an image. You're done. You have your probabilities, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you make it sound so easy.
I mean, it's because it really actually is.
Well, it's funny. Like, I feel like people are so interested in like the machine learning aspects of things.
Yeah.
But if you think about the complexity of the workflow, we just spent like half an hour describing like just getting the data ready to feed to XGBoost or whatever model you want to use. And then the XGBoost bit was like, I don't know, 2 minutes. It's like, then you're done.
Oh,
you know?
it's the least impressive, fastest, the thing you have to think the least about. Like, insert XGBoost with random forest or support vector machine, or, you know, dare I even say like logistic regression. And I bet it works almost as well, if not just as well. One thing I forgot that I have played around a lot with, and I found to work quite well with this high res stuff, is because you have with SkySat, like because you're imaging at these different times of day, let's say even within a month, right? Like you look at imagery from Sentinel-2 over October, for example, and it kind of looks like seasonally correct, right? Like the illumination looks the same every time. You know, you get this like slight seasonal shift and whatever. But with SkySat, because you're imaging, and this is true with all these task missions, right? Depending on when they take an image, because of the varying illumination conditions, the actual like the characteristics of the color are totally different, scene to scene. And so, if you want a model to generalize to more than just your particular pair at that particular from time A to time B, like let's say you wanted to use the same model for all of Gaza for any pairwise combination. I think that's a reasonable thing to want to have, right? You need to account for those. You either need to account for those shifts in color up front from the data side, or you have to sample through it from the training side.
Right.
So you have to either sample through a ton of different time points to try to capture all these illumination conditions, or you just have to do it up front, I think. And maybe there's another way to do it that I am not thinking about.
Maybe a foundation model?
Maybe a foundation model would just do that for you because it's been trained on the world. Yeah, maybe actually.
Actually, maybe this isn't the dumbest. Anyway.
Okay, no, hold up. Tell me about how a foundation model solves this. I'm curious.
Well, I guess if you pre-train, I mean, I guess the foundation model maybe would solve this in the same way the sampling method that you described would. Like it's seen enough variability in pre-training that it's less bothered by that than by the actual texture, like a texture versus color kind of thing. So it's seen lots of different colors, but the textures kind of remain the same, like the statistical distribution of the spatial patterns. And so maybe there is a part of that model that could learn this and then be more resilient to changes in illumination or color than a naive model would. There was a lot of maybes in that sentence.
Yeah, maybe it'll just work as soon as you just prompt it, it's boom.
Well, I guess the thing is like if you knew how to solve that problem in pre-training, then you would kind of know how to solve that problem without pre-training.
Sure.
And then why would you pre-train? You would just solve the problem. So
fair enough. Yeah. But I'm an idiot. I don't know how to do any of that stuff. So in my worldview, it's like you solve it up front or you sample through it after the fact.
Uh-huh.
And so I actually just solve it up front. And so I have started doing this with like all the SkySat data that I work with,
Mm-hmm.
at least from a modeling standpoint, is what I do is I always correct it. I correct the RGB bands. I do like a histogram fit from the SkySat data to what
Mm-hmm.
Sentinel-2 looks like at that time period. So I
Oh.
do a histogram match of the RGB values from sensor A at illumination time X to sensor B at a consistent illumination time. And so I like kind of fake the RGB data to always look like Sentinel-2.
Is there a reason you don't match it to one SkySat image?
I guess I could match it to one SkySat image. I'm not sure if that matters from a modeling standpoint, but yeah, I guess that's a good point. I guess you could match it to just one SkySat image. Yeah.
Yeah, like have a base image basically or something like, or one Sentinel image if you wanted.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel fair to match it to one Sentinel image because I still want to capture the seasonal variation.
Right.
So that's why that was my
point.
rationale for being like, I want to match it to the seasonally consistent Sentinel-2 acquisition. So what I do is I calculate a composite from within like Gaza is not very cloudy at all. So you just need like 2 weeks of Sentinel-2 around a date. You know, calculate your median composite or medoid or pick your favorite. And I just do the histogram matching. I actually do it in Earth Engine. And what that does is it just gives me really consistent looking data. So then my model kind of knows what to expect too. I don't know.
Okay. So
who knows if it's the right thing to do? Yeah.
But that's the thing is if you're visually checking, then you kind of know that it's working.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Like, no, that's how you know.
But you know, if you didn't do any of this, you can still visually make out the things you want to in all these.
Did you try
illumination? I've tried not doing any of this, and then the model doesn't generalize well. Probably because my model is so simplistic. I think the other way you can tackle this is you know, kind of like your foundation model comment, but it's like you can just tackle it from model complexity too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't know what the best way to handle that is.
Okay, so wait, walk me through this process. So I guess the first thing you tried is doing it without the histogram match.
Yeah. So first off, if you just care about time A, time B, run a model, you don't care at all. Like you can overfit your model and you don't care about it generalizing, and you don't have to do any of this, and you're done.
Yeah.
And if you do care about it generalizing, or if you're mosaicing across a week's worth of data, you know, then you start caring, and so then you have to decide where to solve this. Yeah.
And so you ran it, and it worked well for that scene, and then you ran it on a different pair.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, the performance is definitely degraded on this pair.
Yeah, seriously degraded. And it's because it's like things that you know, things look bright in a different way in RGB space.
Yeah.
Depending on the illumination. Yeah.
Yeah. And your histogram matching each scene, that makes total sense. And so then you tried at that point. You were thinking, okay, how can I make this generalize better?
Right.
I could go and relabel data in the new pair, but then I have to go and relabel data in every pair.
Or a lot of pairs.
Or a lot of pairs. Or I can try this histogram matching thing.
Right.
You tried that, and then it appeared to just generalize well off of that.
Or better, yeah. I still need kind of seasonal labels if I want it to generalize across time.
So did you go and generate more labels?
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of a multi-pronged effort. And this thing, this kind of work evolved over time. So it started out as me doing none of this and just doing a local co-registration fix, doing one time pair, getting something working. That was enough at one point. And then as we got more ambitious and wanted to do more, it's like we had to do more and more of this upfront or have systems to do more of it in a more automated way. And so that's how I kind of built this thing out, is like, Step by step.
Gotcha. And so when you're relabeling, when you're labeling new data, like when do you stop? Like, how do you decide, like, all right, that's enough, I should try something now?
I don't know. I usually spend about an hour and I'm like, this looks good.
That's enough.
You can do a couple hundred easy for each, maybe more for each class. I was only solving binary classification problems, but
And you're doing this in QGIS?
Yeah, I mean, 11 QGIS. Yeah, especially with high res, it's like I actually have migrated a lot of my stuff to Earth Engine, but in terms of labeling, core registration stuff, I still use QGIS for that.
Yeah. What stuff have you migrated to Earth Engine? I mean, I guess the histogram match is already in there.
Yeah, the histogram match I do in Earth Engine. I've migrated the model entirely into Earth Engine as the data volume has become higher and higher. You asked, are you doing this all locally? I started doing it all locally, and then as soon as I was dealing with like a 4 gigabyte TIFF at this point, and then that was compounding, it's like the local stuff starts falling over. So Earth Engine scales really nicely for stuff like this.
Yeah, so you're just doing like the random forest.
In
Earth Engine.
Exactly.
And you're outputting probabilities?
Outputting probabilities, I do post-process, the typical stuff, median filters, vectorization.
Are you tuning the probability as well? Are you like thresholding to make the detections?
Exactly.
You're kind of just looking at it and being like, all right.
Because I have all this post-processing to remove what I know are false areas.
Yeah.
Kind of, we've talked about this a bunch before. It's like, do you solve it at the model stage or do you solve it at in the post-processing stage? And so I've got all these heuristics that are hyper-specific to my specific problem and the particular like land cover and geography in Gaza, that where it's like I have these heuristic rules about how to handle building shadows or like shadow misalignments, how to handle false detections in these open areas where there's nobody and stuff like that.
Here's a question. When you look at the probabilities, like the deployed ones, do you find I feel like I often find that they're scaled poorly. Like the classifier's trying to learn 0.5, but it's never 0.5. It's always, in fact, often I find my to choose a higher probability threshold. And I don't know if that's, so I looked into this and there's some like probability calibration methods that you can do like post-training. But I just wonder have you noticed that as well, or like 0.5 usually around where you're sitting?
I'm actually usually setting kind of around 0.5, and honestly, I've set it lower before to gain a little bit of sensitivity. Because I was so confident in some of my post-processing methods that I knew that I would beat down extra noise easily.
Right. Yeah.
But and like this problem that I have solved many times is like this tent detection problem, and so there's certain ways, and sensitivity is nice because what you end up capturing is kind of the edges of these tents,
right?
As opposed to just the sometimes these 1 pixel centroids, like these aren't big, and so more sensitivity is really, really nice. And during this labeling process, the thing you're trying to label for is where do tents show up, and throughout the conflict, tents have showed up kind of everywhere. They've showed up in open fields. They've showed up on top of sand near the beach. They've showed up on top of rubble. They showed up in the middle of a road. And so there's all these possible types of land cover where the change can take place. And so actually the model's learning a fairly complex, it's not a totally trivial problem. And so so I think I've found that setting that threshold kind of lower actually has helped me many times.
Interesting.
Yeah. But I agree with you that the probabilities don't seem to be scaled well. I feel like I have seen that before, where they seem kind of bunched in these different groups of values.
Yeah. and I guess that's specific to, like, we can get away with it because in mapping we're still trying to make like the vector or the thresholded predictions, and we're doing it manually. But I guess people who do real machine learning really need to worry about these probabilities being scaled well.
I'm definitely not doing real machine learning.
Oh.
Yeah. That's my high res tirade.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. And also, I guess we had a couple questions. So if anyone listening has made I was just going to say if anyone listening has made a high res base map, we would like to hear from you and hear about the process. I guess I would be interested to know how that went.
Mm-hmm.